Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and as a little bit of a change to form, if you will, what we're actually going to do today is that we're going to have a little discussion about it for those who've never really know of Chris, and these are things that will have to be ironed out and discussed in videos I'll be doing next year. What we're actually going to talk about are the misconceptions when it comes to Chris. We're going to talk about things that are technically not true, but they've sort of been accepted a little bit as truth. So if you are asking yourself, well, what are the absolute truths about things and what reliable forms of information can we gather as to whether or not things are really true or not? Because even to this day, there are a lot of things about Chris that are very speculatory, and also there are many things that there's only really like one person who does know the truth. However, even they are classified as unreliable, even in amongst more serious matters. Now, in this article, there's actually several things we've covered previously, but there are things that, again, we're trying to just nip, particularly so there aren't any fallouts or there isn't any things, there's problems in terms of certification and what is the truth of certain things. So if you do sort of want to maybe could contribute and say, well, unfortunately this is not true because of this source, then feel free to make these thoughts known if there's evidence to prove it. So with that being said, we're going to go from A to Z, and we start with the affair with Mother. Many have come to believe that Chris had assaulted his own mother when the news came out that he was having an incestuous affair with her following the leak of the infamous incest call. This notion would be perpetrated by several YouTubers and news panels, sometimes indirectly by claiming that Bob has dementia. Despite this, Chris has only ever been charged with incest with own child or grandchild. After this affair, and was never officially charged for rape or sexualized assault. Along with that, claims that Barbara had dementia had primarily came from begging videos where she could be playing up her frailty to elicit pity for money. Therefore, whether or not this affair was entirely consensual is inconclusive. Similarly, Barbara having dementia is inconclusive as well because there's no evidence. We can say Barbara has dementia because of the way she acts, but if we're without any proof, medical records or otherwise, we can't say whether she does or does not. So that's why we have to tread with caution. But for the most part, she doesn't, unless proved otherwise, for whatever that's worth. Annexes. It is sometimes stated that Annexes is a female as a result of being referred to by she/her pronouns. However, this was only when he role-played as the character Lane Chu, who is female. Autism. It is common for observers to attempt to diagnose Chris as having more than just autism, speculating what other types of disabilities or disorders he may have. It is also common to suggest that Chris couldn't possibly be autistic because of his sex drive, or conversely, that the love quest is his way of overcompensating for the lack thereof, while asexuality, a lack of attraction to other people sexually, which isn't necessarily the same as a low sex drive, since asexuals can masturbate to pure satisfaction, is more common among autistic people. It is far from universal. Chris's lack of singing ability has been occasionally attributed to his autism. While a lack of control of inflections or standard presentation thereof is a common trait of autistic speech, autistic people are actually more likely to excel in analyzing hearing, imagining, audiation, and producing exact pitches, and are more likely to have perfect pitch. Some people claim that Chris was self-diagnosed. His autism papers differ. Many also view mild autism as being synonymous with mild intellectual disability. However, autistics are often or normal or higher intelligence, Chris's IQ, however, remains unknown. Chris has occasionally been accused of having a psychiatric disorder such as schizophrenia. Such a condition has neither been confirmed or denied. While Chris has occasionally hinted at believing cartoon characters to be real, he does clearly separate that reality from the actual reality by acknowledging them as existing in a separate dimension. While him seeing the characters might sound like Chris hallucinating, further analysis reveals that Chris is simply imagining them. And while Chris post jail has exhibited what some have identified as side effects of antipsychotics, such as mild sedation, rapid weight gain after losing most of it in prison, twitches that can't be explained as stims, etc., those drugs are often prescribed as mere tranquilizers to people for a variety of reasons, including as an elective treatment for autistic irritability, and Chris never confirmed or denied taking them anyway. Autism disorder deferred disposition. Though Chris was dismissed from the case regarding his affair with Barb, accounting for his autism, it should be noted that he wasn't found innocent either. The records regarding the full scope of the case are sealed. Bailey J. It is often rumored that Chris was actually not disgusted by Bailey at all, and in fact was hitting on her. This appears to come from the fact that Chris still called her pretty even after discovering she was a hermaphrodite, and the rather vague way he responded to her apologizing for accidentally sending him more nude photos after his initial shock. Though this isn't entirely impossible, it also hasn't been fully proven that this was the case. Barbara Chandler. It is often speculated by historians and observers that Barbara may have some degenerative brain disease, most often dementia. However, any official diagnosis of Barb's mental state is yet to be seen. It's worth noting that trusted sources have claimed to have talked to Barb and have stated that she's pretending to be senile in order to get money. While many of Chris and Bob's begging videos do show traits such as delayed speech or an apparent lapse of memory, other videos show Bob to be quite lucid, such as the few surviving clips of Chris Chan versus the internet. However, it is worth noting that dementia is a condition where people may have good and bad days or show more lucidity from time to time. Bob Chandler. Bob's rather complicated relationship with Chris is oftentimes simplified into either being entirely good or entirely bad. It is sometimes stated that Bob had stopped caring about Chris at some point in his life, and only showed concern for his involvement with trolls for his own purposes. Such instances of this include supposedly paying Chris's high school gal pals for their time with Chris, as well as his intervention with Chris when trolls leaked their addresses online. These are based on speculation, however. Also, Bob is sometimes stated to be a Korean War veteran. This is incorrect. He served in the US Army Signal Corps during Operation Blacklist 40, the American occupation of the southern half of Korea after World War II, and was discharged in 1948, never to have seen combat. Caden Peck. It was believed for some time that Caden Peck had approved of Larry Vaughn's plan to send Chris to Florida, though this came from Vaughn reiterating what Bella, who has been known to betray her associates, in this case Prater, told him. It is often stated that Caden had staged some of the post-jail sightings in order to promote sales towards Prater, usually attributing accounts that post their photos to him, posting them through the use of throwaway and sock puppet accounts on websites such as Reddit and the Kiwi Farms. However, such claims claim to be down to conjecture, and there are so far no confirmed cases of this. Clyde Cash. It is believed by some that the Clyde Cash persona was played by multiple people taken on by one identity. While several people would go under the name Clyde Cash, mostly for completely unrelated plans, the original persona was associated mostly with Chris Story, was played by a single troll. The same troll would play as other characters in Quistory, including Vivian G, Greg Mays, and Mao Ling. Emergency Protective Order. Through the document lists Bob as a victim and ordered Chris to be taken away from Bob, who was deemed an alleged abused person, Chris was still only charged for incest under Virginia law, which doesn't specify a victim. Fiona Cooper. Fiona Cooper, also known as Snoo or the Sutress, was invited by Chris to join him and Bella to the Brony convention Everfree Northwest. Bella then invited Fiona into one of her Discord servers after she and Fiona were invited into the WCT's Knights of Quick server. After Bella had a call with Chris regarding his affair with his mother, she gave a clip of it to Fiona, who then shared it to a group of people in another server, causing it to get leaked. Much like with Chris, Fiona being autistic led to a flurry of misconceptions, with many sources putting great emphasis on this facet of her. It is sometimes stated that Fiona was mentally handicapped as a result of her being autistic. In actuality, autism is a spectrum and affects those who have it differently. Yeah, for example, it's a neurological condition and it's a very case-by-case basis because it changes and develops based on how the brain ages and develops as well. Now, with that being said, there is consensus and some conflicting reports about even if you've never had COVID-19, it sort of ages the brain in a very specific way. How it affects people who are autistic, however, is yet to be explained. End of footnote. Excelling in some areas over others, intellectually or otherwise, the belief that Fiona is mentally impaired appears to stem from the fact that Spooky Bones made a post on Kiwi Farms discouraging others from doxing Fiona, while calling her an extremely autistic young woman. Despite such claims, nothing about Fiona indicates she's intellectually or otherwise mentally impaired. It is sometimes speculated that Chris supposedly didn't pursue Fiona because of her autism, citing his attraction sign, which explicitly stated that he didn't want an autistic girlfriend. This is ignoring the fact that said attraction sign was created 20 years before he met Fiona, and that Chris's tastes have drastically evolved over time. Fiona being autistic, combined with being framed by Bella, also led to the assumption of Fiona being a Chris-like figure, with some even going as far as to claim she's more of a vulnerable adult than Chris is. This has led to the belief that she was meant to serve as a fall girl, and many of the other rumors mentioned in this section, with beliefs in her being mentally impaired, leading to the assumption that she didn't have accountability in her involvement in Quistory. It is also a common belief that Fiona asked to be censored on the Quickie and elsewhere, with some accounts stating she changed her mind afterwards. In actuality, Fiona never made such requests in the first place, and even actively went against people's attempts at censoring her. The obfuscation of Fiona primarily arose from stigma surrounding her getting doxed following by Bella framing her. Additionally, the Sutress policy on the Quickie was an entirely unilateral decision made by a single quick-up jerk-up, Psycho Nerd 054. In response to this stigma, he also did not ask for the input of other users on the Quickie, nor did he ask Fiona personally if she wanted to be censored. Upon returning on a throwaway account on Reddit, Fiona both announced that she was the Everfree Sutress and posted a picture of herself promoting her throwaway. The belief that she wanted censorship appears to stem from the fact that Psycho's inspiration for the policy was the Wallflower policy, where that actually did happen. It is a commonly held belief that Fiona wanted to be Chris's sweetheart, while she had admitted to having an actual crush on him. She had never actually stated to have a desire to be a sweetheart of his or to be in a long-term relationship with him. She would claim in texts, however, that she was fine with the friends with benefits thing and that Chris considers her his first real sweetheart. Along with the first point, It is often speculated by observers why Chris supposedly didn't pursue a relationship with Fiona and chose Barbara over her. In reality, Chris seemed to have held a rather conflicting standpoint towards her attraction towards him, claiming in chats and calls that he didn't see the relationship lasting long, foreseeing that she'd meet a long-term sweetheart in college. However, Chris would also promise to her in a recording regarding Everfree Northwest not to be enraged at the G5 merchandise that may show up, and state that he loved her. He would also claim in a text that having sex with her would be the right step for her to take both her from her emotional and mental development. Fiona would also claim in a conversation with Bella that Chris was embarrassed and nervous at the thought of his first real sweetheart. Chris would also refer to her a pet name as Fifi that he had given to her in a jail letter. Along with all that, Chris had been having his affair with his mother since late June, roughly a month before he ever met Fiona. It is often claimed that Bella wanted to film Chris having sex with Fiona for blackmail purposes, usually following that she'd do this to frame him as the P word. This appears to be a rumor loosely based on two excerpts from the incest call and excerpts from leaked messages involving Bella with regards to the call. The first excerpt was where Bella discusses her friend Fiona, who held a crush on Chris, and tries to encourage Chris to pursue a relationship with her. In the second, Bella said she would create a slideshow of romantic stuff between Chris and Fiona during the Everfree Northwest convention festivities. Bella does not seem to actually state wanting to put any sexual content into the presentation. Adding on to all of that, Chris already discussed with Bella about the planned sexual intercourse he'd have with Fiona before she made the call. With regards to the leaked messages, however, Bella tried to create a cover story to protect Fiona when questioned by the Knights, claiming she was a minor. This was after the calls got leaked, and after plans for the convention were arranged, so it is unlikely that Bella intended to frame Chris of being the P word. It is sometimes stated that Fiona was a victim of sexualized abuse, explaining certain factors such as her crush towards Chris, though this isn't entirely out of the realm of possibilities. This hasn't been fully confirmed. Additionally, since her account was deleted prior, some of the evidence for this came from Kiwi Farms users trying to attribute her to posts from deleted accounts on the Quickies Discord server after being referred to as Snoo, her screen name on said server. This search for her posts also didn't account for the fact that she used a second account, which used an entirely different name, Scootaloo's sister, after being banned from the server for the first time. In addition to all of this, Bella is often cited to want to steal Fiona from Chris, often to represent it as her wanting to sexually assault her. Such claims, however, are based on out-of-context chats involving Bella, stating that she became besties with Fiona and swore to protect her from Chris. This also ignores the fact that Fiona herself engaged in flirtatious behaviors with Bella, sending her a picture of both her face and legs, and telling Bella she had sex with men, meaning that whatever feelings Bella had towards Fiona were entirely consensual. Bella had also stated that she only wanted to go to the convention to dance with Fiona and at the Grand Galloping Gala event at the convention, but otherwise hadn't expressed anything beyond that. It is often stated that Fiona was brought to a mental hospital or was institutionalized after her encounters with Chris, with the story usually stating that it was a result of Gibby leaking her phone number or as a result of Bella framing her. Chris also repeated this rumor in an interview he had with Keffels. In actuality, this is an exaggeration made regarding events surrounding Fiona being told to the Mean Girls by her friend Grant. One of the Mean Girls had stated that Grant told them that Fiona had her internet privileges revoked and may have been brought into inpatient psychiatric care. Grant seemed to have chosen not to give the exact details surrounding this, but this essentially means that Fiona was temporarily brought to therapy for a short period, likely overnight. This is not the same thing as being put in a mental hospital. Flutter. After Chris was released from jail, he was spotted many times with an unnamed gal pal, usually referred to as Flutter. Often deemed as being one of the most mysterious aspects of Christory, several rumours surrounding her and her relations to Chris had naturally arisen afterwards. Some believe that Flutter was a recruit from Prater, though actual proof of this has yet to surface. It is often supposed that Flutter is Finnish or perhaps Finnish American, since Chris began studying Finnish in Duolingo, for no particular reason, around the time he had met her and subsequently went to Finland multiple times with her. However, these factors cannot be classified as hard proof, and observers have noted that she speaks fluent English. Additionally, one observer stated that she made no noticeable foreign accent, and others claimed that she spoke with an affected anime girl voice. It is sometimes stated that Flutter might be mentally handicapped. While this isn't entirely out of the realm of possibilities, most of this comes down to conjecture than anything substantiated. This appears to be based on Chris's encounters with Fiona, which had occurred under similar circumstances. One of the people who spotted Flutter with Chris claimed that she wasn't noticeably handicapped. It is claimed that Flutter frequented several Finnish image boards, though the identity of this poster hasn't been disclosed. It was once written on Flutter's page by the Ween Zeller that when she wore a face mask and sunglasses both to the airport and at a convention, she did this as a means to avoid attention from Weens. Several other similar rumours about Flutter's face being obscured in photos would soon follow, with some even accusing those who took photos of her and Chris of being in cahoots with people like Caden Peck. Once again, while it is not entirely impossible that Flutter is trying to conceal her identity, almost all signs of this are circumstantial at best. Also on Flutter's page, it was written that there was a possibility that Flutter showed reciprocatory for Chris when he allegedly hugged her at a CVS, stating that her body language didn't indicate reciprocatory. She didn't seem to suggest that she didn't want it, though this was based on a very blurry photo of them, where not at all the details could be made out. This means it would be impossible to make out either of their body languages. While the person who took the photos who claimed that Flutter was uncomfortable with Chris's supposed advances, their claims have yet to be fully verified. Zeller also knowingly spread a rumour that Chris and Flutter were going to have a baby sometime in the summer of 2025, for the sole purpose of stirring up drama. He based this rumour on a misheard clip of a live stream. This rumour got prompted by several sources, including Noel himself, so much so that it even made it onto a tabloid media such as the Daily Mail. In actuality, Chris had never discussed any such plans of having a child with Flutter, and this was in fact speaking hypothetically on such a scenario. Flutter's first name is rumoured to be Alui, an uncommon old-fashioned Finnish woman's name, on the basis of an alleged call between a financial enabler and Chris posted on YouTube on the 12th of June 2025. In the call, the enabler tries to get Chris's guard down by asking him questions about Autobots and Count Graduon before abruptly asking, "Does Eileen know about this?" causing Chris to respond, "Her name is Ali." Some have argued that the call was created using AI voice simulation tools or is otherwise inauthentic. Even if the call is authentic, it hasn't been confirmed that Alui or Alui is the correct spelling of the name. Gal pal. It is often asserted that Chris's high school gal pals were paid by Bob to hang out with him during school hours and look out for him. Conversations between trolls and the former friends indicate that they had some kind of informal arrangement with Bob and the school principal, but there is no indication that they were ever paid for their services. When Chris was in middle school, however, Bob did pay a girl named Natasha to walk around with him and from the bus stop, with Chris handing her the money himself. Chris himself now believes that his supposed friends were paid to hang out with him, causing him to disparage them as hired help. This is based on a conversation he had with a troll who was posing as one of his friends in question. After he was told they had been paid, he asked Barbara if that was true, and she told him it was. However, it is likely that Bob was never familiar with the details of the arrangement and may have had them confused with Natasha. People sometimes cite fake quotes from the troll Phaeton, who impersonated Chris's high school gal pals, as evidence for them supposedly loathing Chris or regretting their friendships with him. It is also entirely unlikely that these gal pals would ever have expressed any feelings about Chris's online presence, as they have long since moved on with their lives and have families. Gibby. Gibby, a semi-popular Chris-tuber, made a daily series regarding the incest saga of Christery. He consulted several conflicting sources for information regarding the act, one of which was Bella. Bella tried to convince him that she wasn't Kelly Osbourne, which Gibby argued for. Bella also took screenshots of her DMs with Fiona and Chris and gave them to Gibby to leak. The screenshots included header information on names and phone numbers for both. When making a video of the screenshots, Gibby attempted to crop out the header information. While he succeeded at most, he neglected to crop 2 instances, leaving Fiona's phone number briefly visible. When told of this by Kiwi Farms users, Gibby promptly deleted the video and redid it to censor one instance, but failed to catch the other. When informed again, he again deleted the video. Gibby later posted the screenshots onto Kiwi Farms, where he applied censorship to Fiona's phone number and not Chris's. Before the uploading of the infamous video by him, where he leaks Fiona's phone number, Gibby would mention on the Kiwi Farms about getting information on the leaks from a friend of his alongside Bella. The friend that Gibby was talking to was presumed to be the WCT. In actuality, the friend was a CCCC user that went under the username Lavender Bones on that server, who seemed to be supportive of Fiona, leaking a chunk of the incest call, even going as far as calling her a hero. In its earliest form, Gibby had a section of the Orbiter Wave page, which initially covered people that were prominent during the incest saga. In it, his leaking of Fiona's number was characterized as intentional from being prompted by Bella's disinformation. The section originally stated that immediately accepting Bella's story that the entire scandal was the fault of Fiona, he then leaked Fiona's phone number in one of his videos for thousands to see. It appears to be speculation that there was a link between the phone number leak and Bella's story. The section was also revised to clarify that the leak was in the form of screenshots of text messages between Bella and Fiona in which a phone number was not redacted. Honor roll. Whether Chris made the honor roll or exactly what such a feat entitled around the time of his graduation is unknown. Incest call. A key aspect regarding the drama that followed from Chris's affair had primarily come from how clips of this call had been leaked. So far, only 4 clips of varying lengths of this call had ever been leaked, all with various amounts of context. Because of this, many unproven claims regarding the people involving of the incest, Watchmen, and Lane Shoe sagas have been heavily propagated. The date of the call is unclear, which in turn has led to gossip on what Bella wanted to do with the call. Evidence points to either the 27th of July 2021 or the 28th of July as the call date. However, much of the evidence was from Bella's screenshots, and she had a history of creating fabricated text at least once. Isabella Loretta Janke. Isabella Loretta Janke is most known for her involvement in a call where Chris describes incestuous acts he's performed towards his mother. Before this, Bella had been in touch with Chris for almost a year, acting nice around him while also showing many instances of A-logging or wishing harm towards him in Discord chats. Sometimes outright claiming to want to make him harm himself. She would also roleplay as prior gal pals like Kelly Andes and an employee for the Curiosity stream, and has been known to encourage the verbal harassment and bullying of other students at her university. This edgy behaviour would lead to many instances of misinformation or unproven claims resulting from the chaos around the incest core. Gossip on Kiwi farms, much of which was perpetrated by user Spooky Bones, being taken at face value, and Bella's alleged plots towards Chris. It is often stated that Bella had convinced Chris to commit incest on his mother. In actuality, Bella was in a call with him, where Chris had discussed the matter openly with her. Chris had told her multiple times of instances of having an affair with a sweetheart over the age of 50, and had even admitted to having a wet dream of his mother in one other instance. It was initially written that Bella had an S-word plot towards Chris dating back to the 25th of April 2020. This was based on a Discord user, ZorgothTDK, who alleged that DMs between him and Bella, in which a deleted user states, "That's what we're trying to do with Chris, get him be S-word because he's the R-word," where Bella discussing Chris, however, Bella knew of two other people named Chris, her cousin, and another Discord user. Sorry, where was I? Making it unclear if she was referring to Chris Chan, though Zorgoth TDK claims that Bella was referring to Chris Chan. The full log of his conversation with the deleted user makes no indication, however, that Chris Chan was being discussed. In addition, communication between Bella and Chris Chan has not been established for the time frame of April of 2020. The earliest known message from Bella to Chris Chan occurred in October of 2020. The exact time at which Bella had actually started interacting with Chris is not known, but she has claimed in one instance to have started trolling Chris for almost a year, to one of her own chess club associates in a July 2021 Discord message. However, in two other instances, Bella would claim to a friend that she did have a plan to get Chris to kill himself in at least one instance, and claim that she wanted Praetor members to convince him to cut off his penis in another, and hoping that he would die from a gender reassignment surgery accident. It was initially written that Bella had a blackmail plot involving the incest call. Usually, this claim is in conjunction with the claim that Bella wanted to record Chris having sex with Fiona. While Bella had intended to leak the call at an unspecified point, and had created fake texts where Chris states he performed BDSM-style sex with Bob in the meantime. It is not known for sure if this would have involved blackmailing Chris. It was initially written by that Bella had self-assigned her bodyguard role for Everfree Northwest. However, Chris had assigned her the role. It is believed by some that Bella had an incest fetish. Part of the reason for her call with Chris, this would even be written a few times in articles that mention her. However, whether or not Bella was actually into incest is unclear. This part seems to come from an incest fanfiction that she had allegedly created under the account Naruto is Gay 77897. which involves a father-son relationship between Naruto characters. However, the link between this account and Bella is unclear, and the account itself has "I'm into engineering and electromagnetism and shit, but you don't find any of that shit here, only gay hentai bitches" as its description, suggesting that it could be a troll account. If created by her, the account therefore cannot be used to prove this, as its legitimacy is questionable. A user by the name Gugan would also continuously question Bella on this point, citing part of a transcription of her call with Chris, which claims that she talked to Chris while aroused, though he didn't give the source for this particular transcript or where he was reading it from. It was once written on the Discord page that Bella was a member of the official Quickie server before the call. This was loosely based off a policy on the server where mentioning or talking about her is prohibited, as moderators on the server were notified about harassment on the server, and were concerned of the possibility that either she or her friends would report the server if they found out that anyone was discussing her. The jail saga. The letters that Chris had written in jail could not be used as evidence against him in court, as they were strictly in his word. Jeff Uzo. The Jeff/Francine character did not create the Christian Western Channel's Adult Chronicles fan game. It was the Quickie Forms user Maple. Because of Chris declaring this, several people came to believe that Jeff/Francine was Maple. Lane Shoe. The Lane Shoe character wasn't a troll persona. The character itself was created by Chris as a coping mechanism for the purpose of explaining certain events in his life. Chris entrusted the Watchman to control Lane Shoe so that he could be chronicled properly. The Watchman later used the persona with the intention of documenting select chats with his permission, and later to observers to ask him questions by proxy when he got banned from the Quickie Discord server. It was once written on the WCT's page that he was the primary Lane Shoe, though this is despite the fact that he rejected the role when requested by Chris. Liquid Chris. It is often stated that Liquid Chris was a single person. In actuality, Liquid was played by a set of twins, Christopher and John Duckworth. While Christopher played as Chris in YouTube videos and PVCC chats, John played Liquid during the SingStar challenge. While the Miscreants, a group of trolls, including the one behind Clyde Cash, would claim Liquid Chris, the brothers and girlfriend behind Liquid Chris and Casey alike appear to have started their trolling independently, after Christopher Duckworth began comically impersonating Chris Chan. Liquid Chris started impersonating Chris a month before the Rolling and Trolling video, and was barely influenced by this video. Megan Schroeder. It later surfaced that Chris did not shred the physical copy of SheCameForQuick.jpg before placing it in the crumple lope, but neatly cut it into squares. It is often stated that Megan was the only legitimate female friend that Chris had that wasn't a troll. While Megan is the most well-known one, this is ignoring people in Chris's life like Anna McLaren, the Wallflower, Fiona Cooper, the Pokemon League friends, Tings, MKR Night V, Helen Florenza, Midnight Moonflower, and Flutter. Michael Snyder. There is no evidence that Michael Snyder is Jewish, either by faith or ethnicity. This came from Chris believing him to be such due to his last name. The now deleted YouTube account, The Recolic, claimed to be Michael in comments, which he left on multiple videos by Chris. It is unclear whether this account really was Michael or if it was someone posing as him. On the 6th of June 2010, The Recolic left a comment about an encounter he was having with Chris at the game place. Right now, Chris subsequently confirmed that an encounter had taken place, seemingly confirming the account's legitimacy. Although In Chris's telling, it had happened the previous Friday, the 4th of June, after Fridays After 5. The Recolic also claimed that Chris had used the N-word to refer to black patrons of the game place prior to his banning, an allegation which was otherwise unsubstantiated. Monthly Tugboat. It was previously written on the page that Chris would earn more money overall if he got an actual job and didn't rely solely on the tugboat. This, however, was built off a number of assumptions and speculative information. Bob did not actually believe that Chris would make more money off of the tugboat, and actually was hoping that Chris would find actual employment, expressing being impressed at Chris's computer literacy and him obtaining 2 CAD degrees. The N-word. Chris has never said the N-word outside of troll interference. He also never said the phrase "no D word." This came out of a piece of fan art parodying his attraction sign. Official Quick Mart. It is often said that Chris only makes 7% of all of the sales from official Quick Mart. However, this estimate conflates his royalty from the Praetor-made medallions with the stuff that he makes himself. It is currently unknown how much of the content sold on the Etsy was from Chris collaborating with Praetor. Payfork. Although not impossible, all evidence of Chris being the P-word so far comes from untrustworthy sources or instances where trolls pressured him into saying such things, so it is unwise to assume so. Praetor. Larry Vaughan's claims about Praetor were once written on their article. However, he based these claims off of things that were said verbatim by Bella, a known habitual liar who was on several occasions lied about her own associates. A few such claims include, but not limited to, Praetor were a group of trolls akin to the Idea Guys or the TT Squad. They produce a lot of their merchandise in a nasty basement. Larry's plan to send Chris to Florida was approved by Caden. Chris roleplayed as Sonichu at all times. Chris was still going after his high school gal pals to the point of people needing to change their profiles. Chris was tasing himself out of fear that the dimensional merge wasn't going to happen. It is often stated that Bella was a member of Praetor due to the fact that she was commissioned by them to create an animation, and the fact that Larry Vaughn cited her as such. Despite this, Bella was never involved in any of their own other projects. Rocky Shoemaker. It was once written on Rocky's article that she had used Blue Sky, and that Chris had blocked her account. In actuality, this was an imposter account that was created with the intent of trolling Chris. Sylvana Rosechew. It is often believed that Sylvana always had a penis. In reality, she started out as a female Rosechew, but Chris introduced the law of being made intersex in Sonichu issue 8, where she had the ability to give herself a penis or vagina at will, as a component of her ability to shapeshift. This was a condition from Count Graduan that she lost her ability to give birth. Similar to Rosechew, however, Sylvana was often portrayed with a penis by trolls to exploit Chris's distaste for hermaphrodites. It is sometimes stated that Sylvana Rosechew was created to represent all of the instances that Chris was catfished by trolls, with a scene in Sonichu issue 10 where Chris is trolled by being seduced by her disguised as Meg Griffin, often being brought up as evidence for this. However, Chris has also stated that this intention for that scene was that Sylvana was all female when she seduced him. Some of Chris's interactions with trolls also seem to indicate that Sylvana's ability was a result of troll influence. Chris has stated that he prefers to have fans draw her with a vagina instead of a penis. And the infamous drawing of her masturbating was a commission from Sarah May, who bribed Chris to make the drawing and similar drawings to get his website back. The taser. It is believed by some that Prater wanted to get Chris to tase himself. Now, in actuality, Chris had discussed plans with Watchmen members Nort and Kyle about plans to shock his gate crystal and celestial key quartz crystals in order to open the portal to another dimension. Citing a Gaia article about ancient civilizations using piezoelectricity to open up portals, Chris wanted to borrow a taser from Prater to tase the crystals. Prater was initially willing to allow him to use it under their supervision. The rumor that they wanted to get him to tase himself was first stated by the Watchmen leader Nort, who had alleged that Caden and Quick as Sonichu Prime discusses the taser and who will be tased. Nort had also left out a clip where the Watchman Valentino brought up the subject and is asking if Chris would tase himself. And Caden Peck discussing how he felt it would be a very bad idea. Interestingly, Isabella Janke, a mirror member of Prater, had also spread the rumor that she had tried convincing Prater members to get Chris to harm himself by getting him to cut his penis off, claiming she was only recruited. The Wallflower. The Wallflower policy appears sometimes to get conflated with the Sutras policy, where it is often stated that Fiona asked for people to censor her. In actuality, Fiona never made such requests to anyone. The Wallflower policy wasn't set up out of respect for the Wallflower, as the Quickie has no obligation to protect people arbitrarily. It was done as a personal request from her to Quickie admins after editors shared information about her that wasn't relevant to Chris. In addition to Chris persistently stating he was in a relationship with her due to her unintentionally being associated with him. Additionally, the policy is primarily enforced solely on the Quickie and its Discord server. Contrary to popular belief, the Wallflower policy did allow users to utilize the Wallflower's identity to some degree, particularly if omitting such information might affect the clarity of information surrounding Chris. Many transcripts that didn't reference Chris being in a relationship with her were transcribed faithfully. Utilizing her first name and several pages on this wiki also still use art and images that utilize her face. The page, meant to explain the Wallflower policy, also admits that attempting to censor the Wallflower in full is not only impossible, but even detrimental to documenting Chris. Chris never referred to the Wallflower as lovely weather. This misconception was as a result of people assuming the character of the same name from the comics was based on the Wallflower. However, Chris has denied any connection between the two. The WCT. One of the primary members of the Watchmen. It was initially written that the WCT wanted Chris to kill himself. This originated from a rumor spread by MKR Nightv, his former associate in the Watchmen Discord server, The Place, in June of 2021. The Watchmen clique was infighting over Nord posting the WCT's docs onto Kiwi Farms. The WCT responded by informing Chris, who left the place, angry over the development. MKR took to Twitter to spread a rumor that the WCT probably wants Chris to kill himself. A month later, the rumor was further spurred by Kiwi Farms forum posters, who assumed from both MKR's rumor and the WCT's interactions with Bella, who had claimed on at least 2 occasions to want to get Chris to harm himself or commit the S-word. that WCT was in on Bella's supposed plots. Despite this, no evidence has surfaced that the WCT knew of Bella's claimed plots. It was initially written in a few articles that Chris had directly contributed to the mass doxing of Fiona by sharing one of her pictures with the WCT. Chris, although posting her photograph to him, would also refer to her by her pen name, Fifi Vixenhart. The WCT wouldn't have become aware of her real name or actually dox her until later, when Bella told him in the regarding Chris chats that Fiona was the sole provider of fabricated texts where Chris states he's done BDSM on Bob while she was doxing her on multiple websites. The WCT would post one of Fiona's videos and use her first name, partially revealing her identity and bringing attention from trolls onto her. It was initially written that the WCT had been recruited into Bella's chess club Discord server. He had actually been invited into a separate server, the chess group number 15. This error was based on mislabeled folders of Discord server chat logs, which were passed around on Kiwi Farms. The folders, however, were labeled Chess Club and Chess Club featuring Fiona and Quick. However, the actual content was Chess Club and Chess Club 15 chat logs. The WCT is often misquoted as proclaiming himself as being the final protagonist of Christery, which was often used as evidence for knowing that Chris was going to commit the S word. In actuality, in his boasting, he proclaimed himself as one of the final protagonists, proclaiming that his work will be held in high regard in Gino Samuel's documentary, and be compared to figures such as Null. Additionally, he said this in reference to the Watchman's belief that Bob's death would be the end of Christery, a belief that WCT had held strongly. Likewise, it was also believed that when he titled his pre-jail interview with Chris Chan as the final pre-jail interview, he also meant this as knowing Chris was going to commit the S word, ignoring the fact that this was indeed the last interview he had with Chris before he went to jail. Transgender. Chris's shift in gender identity and subsequent identification as a lesbian/bisexual trans woman has been a subject of intense debate and scrutiny within and outside the LGBT plus circles, with some believing that it is yet another act designed to enable him to shack up with lesbian women, and still others claiming that Chris openly admitted that this was the case. While the possibility of the former cannot be entirely discounted, no known admission of this nature has ever been made by Chris personally, and none of the assorted chat logs and correspondences leaked since Chris began his transition suggested this either. It is often stated that Chris admitted to adopting a transgender identity solely that he could hook up with the lesbians. This appears to be a confusion for an answer that Chris had posted to a question on OkCupid, where he states that if he was to raise a hermaphrodite, a term which he has used to refer to trans women, he'd raise them as male so they can pick up women, including lesbians. Many suggest that Christine is a fake name. It is in fact his legal first name as of 2016. The Quickie, however, still uses Chris and to a lesser extent Christian for consistency. While Chris has shown early signs of dysphoria, going far back to his times at Manchester High, these shouldn't be taken as a singular cause for it. Trolls. Some of Chris's trolls, particularly most of the miscreants, are often represented as figures that try to help Chris. It should be noted that any mention that they make of this is mostly tongue-in-cheek, as their primary goal was that of any other internet troll to get a rise out of Chris. The Watchmen. The Watchmen are often misleading referred to as an organization of enablers. In reality, the Watchmen were a clique of Chris's most prominent enablers and White Knights, who had used several different Discord servers. The name Watchmen was created directly after some of its members were discovered and connected to previous groups, such as Son of the Miscreants and Arbitrak Quick Alliance, as a sort of allusion to the Miscreants. The WCT, with the intent of cutting ties with others in the Watchmen, also dropped the name entirely when he established Knights of Quick, which had a similar setup but a fundamentally different philosophy when handling Chris's orbiters. Footnotes. This charge only appears to be used for all instances of parent-child and grandparent-grandchild incest at the jails Chris was sent to, probably due to character limits in the charge descriptions, as well as the fact that the text was likely generated through the numeric code for the offense. 2. Anaxis claims that Fiona wasn't aware that she got banned prior to making the second account, though she also stated that people on there naturally missed her. 3. There are a few photos of Flutter that do show her face, such as the image used in the info box, so this is demonstrably false. 4. Specifically wording it like this not only assumes that this is known for a fact that Chris did advance on her, but also implies that because it hasn't been disproven, one could assume she expressed feelings back towards him. And 5. The exact thing that Chris said when answering whether or not intersex children should get surgery was, "If a hermaphrodite, I would raise it to be a male regardless, since it would not have any eggs anyway. Plus, big bonus for him in sex with all women, lesbians included, I would imagine." And with that, that is technically where it all ends. Now, yes, then, and as I tried to explain before, the whole point of this video was to try and actually clear up a lot of misconceptions about Chris over the years. And if there were other things we missed out on this, then I do apologize. But for the time being, this just hopefully clears up, hopefully, some unanswered questions and tied some incredibly prominent loose ends. So, with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys learned something out of this, and I'll see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.